easiest place to find it is Tom Thumb or Albertsons, where they have their free publications, usually right inside the outdoor door. But this one has got an article about the Tennyson Butterfly Garden. It's got an article by Helen Dulock on water-wise gardening. And it has an article by yours truly on sex in the garden. But I had a few up there. This is the only one that's left. When we go after the meeting, a group of us usually goes to the, what's the name of the restaurant?
Gabrielle and Sophia's is the Preston, no, it's not, it's
Meadow Central
Mall.
Yeah.
It's the other side, this side, east side of Tom Thumb.
Yeah, so just go up to Central, take a left, and it's there in that shopping center to the right of the Tom Thumb. So we'll run into Tom Thumb and pick up another handful of these, as I've been doing as I encounter Tom Thumbs around town.
You're taking them all?
No, I never take them all. It's like seeds.
Oh, okay.
You never take them all.
Only 10%.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't have anything formal to say, but why don't you do it? Katie will introduce Sam. We both know Sam, but I don't know all the details.
Hello, I'm Katie. Most of y'all probably know Sam Kieschnick. He is an urban wildlife biologist with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, serving the east side of the DFW Metroplex. He's previously worked as a nature educator with the city of Mansfield at Oliver Nature Park, as a naturalist at the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge, as a science interpreter with the Fort Worth Museum of Science and History, as a botanist with Britt, and as an instructor at Weatherford College. He has a master's degree from Tarleton State University, studying the genetics of pocket gophers. As an urban wildlife biologist, Sam's focus will be on the 3 A's: awareness, appreciation, and action. This is a brand new presentation that Sam developed. So I'm excited to hear it, and I hope y'all are too.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear my voice all right? Is it coming clear okay? Can everyone on Zoom hear me all right? Hopefully I'm not blasting the eardrums out. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to come and talk to y'all. So good to see so many familiar faces here. If I don't know you, hello, and I'd like to know you better. And I too am a Native Plant Society of Texas person. My home chapter is the Cross Timbers, not the Fort Worth, that's Cross Timbers Master Naturalist. The Cross Timbers NPSOT is the Weatherford one. So go out a little bit further west, and that's my home chapter. So I love NPSOT. So thanks so much for giving me the chance to talk tonight. And as Katie mentioned, this is a new presentation. So I'm still refining some of my jokes. So anytime you want to give sympathy laughter, as you just did, I do appreciate that. And on chat, if you can write an LOL, even if you're not doing it, that does make me feel better. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about a love-hate relationship. And just real quick, how many of you have ever been in a relationship before? Been married, have a boyfriend, girlfriend, apart? Anybody? Show of hands. Isn't it interesting that you can truly love a person, but also can't stand them? Has that ever occurred to you? I think this is love. I think this is what love is, where you can love a person, but it can be a kind of relationship too. Well, I'm going to talk about that when it comes to plants and bugs tonight. Let's see if the clicker works. Oh, maybe click that.
Sam, do we need to turn off some lights?
I don't know. Do we need to? Okay.
Yeah. All right.
There you go. That's perfect. That's a good, yeah, that's perfect. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So let's talk about a concept called co-evolution, or evolution with other stuff. And as it is, who was saying that? Was that Bob Dylan that said no man is an island?
Don't think so.
I don't think so. Okay, yeah, he was thinking about something else. But you've heard of that phrase before, no man is an island. The same thing when it comes to nature. No critter is an island. It is changing with the things all around it, and all the things around it also change it. We call this co-evolution. the selective pressures on two species, at least two species. I like the terminology here, reciprocal evolutionary changes. So one thing changes, the other thing changes too, and they adapt together. Let's start with the story. Name him if you know him. Do you know anybody know this guy? Charles Darwin, probably went by Chuck. I bet Chuck Darwin. Interesting guy. And actually, so Katie mentioned, of course, again, I'll say it again. This is a new presentation. I went down several rabbit holes when I was working on this presentation. I enjoyed it so thoroughly. One of the rabbit holes I went down was Darwin's letters. And kind of interesting, the naturalist of the past, or people before we had our phones or emails, we wrote letters to each other. Can you imagine it? We would handwrite letters to each other. And there's a great collection called Correspondence with Darwin. And all of the letters to and from Charles Darwin, or at least many of them, are collected here. So he talks a lot about his findings, what he's excited about, all of that sort of stuff. So he had just published Origin of the Species by Means of Natural Selection in 1859, give or take. And he became a little bit more notorious and more popular. So people were just sending him stuff. People were sending him critters and plants saying, take a look at this. What do you think about this? And Georgia Book, here's a present. Here's some plant or some bug or some specimen. He got a specimen from a guy named James Bateman. James Bateman, who is a horticulturalist and an expert in orchids. And he had collected orchids from around the world. A really interesting orchid that Charles Darwin got was this one, Anagraecium sesquipedale. Have you heard about this? Do you know about this guy? Some folks do. So he got this plant, and in one of his letters, he was talking about it, saying, "What the heck?" I'll paraphrase. "What the heck is this thing?" He even said about this, as he was writing to one of his friends, probably Thomas Hooker or something like that, he said, "I have received such a box full from Mr. Bateman with the astounding Anagraecium sesquipedale with a nectary a foot long. Good heavens, what insect can suck it?" And I don't think he was saying that like offensively, like suck it. I think he was saying, what kind of bug goes to this little plant? When you look at the nectary of this thing, the nectar treat is there at the tip or at the bottom of that long keel. And so Darwin got this and said, holy moly, again, I'm paraphrasing, holy moly, what insect can suck it? Another guy, Alfred Russel Wallace, came up with the idea of natural selection independently. He was a really interesting naturalist. As he read about Charles Darwin and his discovery of this, or not of the discovery, but of his musings of this long nectary, he said that such a moth exists in Madagascar, where the orchid was from, may be safely predicted. And naturalists who visit that island should search for it with as much confidence as astronomers search for the planet Neptune, and they will be equally successful. This little illustration was created before any critter was found. They drew a picture of what they expected to find without even knowing that it existed. Charles Darwin died, Alfred Russel Wallace died. 40 years later, a moth was found. A moth with a monstrous tongue, this proboscis. And look at this. Look at that circular pattern there, that it rolls that proboscis up. This one, the name of this moth, it's got some other names for it, but the scientific name, Xanthopan morgani, and the subspecies Predicta. They predicted it. This is one that they predicted, and it was found 40 years later. So why am I telling you about this Madagascar plant and a Madagascar moth and a Native Plant Society of Texas meeting? The question is why. Every time you see a plant, ask why. Why does it have that structure? Why does it have that color, that scent? Why do the leaves have a smell when you crush them? Is it for you and I? No, the plant doesn't give a crap about you or I. It's producing those things for something else. And I'll actually do a little side note here. Bob and I were talking earlier about edible plants, and I went on a fungus walk with the North Texas Mycological Society a while back. And one of the mycologists on that hike, he wasn't leading it, but I was kind of standing back with him. He was really offended by a question that people kept asking. What do you think people asked on a fungi walk? Where's the magic mushroom? There probably were a few kids. They're like, dude, I heard about a shroom walk. That's why I signed up. What else? Will it kill you? Good. Anything else? Can you eat it? The two big questions. And he sort of confided in me and he said, I hate these questions. How many times have you been on a bird walk and somebody says, can you eat it to a chickadee? Has that ever happened? His point in it, it really made me think that the fungus doesn't exist for our pleasure, for our enjoyment, our food. You know, sure, we do eat and we can kill each other with some of these foods, with some of these different fungi, but the fungus doesn't exist for that purpose. In the same manner with our plants, even though, yes, we've eaten some of them, we enjoy them as we're wooing someone, we will give them a flower. We use these tools, but those plants don't produce that for us. So the main question, and the same question that Charles Darwin asked, why? Why did it have that big long nectary tube? And that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. Let's see. There we go. Good. Okay. So living together, that's okay. We're doing good. Thank you, Emily, for the help here. Symbiosis. So the act of living together. And much as you did with the one that you love or loved, you live together in some days harmony and other days cacophony, I guess. So you can be loving and also fighting in some cases. With plants and bugs, we have different types of relationships, I should say. Mutualism, antagonism. Mutualism, both parties benefit from the relationship. It can be pollination, entomophory, we'll talk about that term, protection. There can also be antagonism, where things don't get along, they're fighting with and amongst each other. One benefits and typically the other does not. We can see this in competition and an arms race too. Okay, I'm not going to step on Janet's toes too much with the sex in the garden talk, but pollination is a pretty beautiful one. The plant produces the flower as an advertisement. It is an advertisement for some other critter to come close. And you know what? Some plants even splash with a little perfume or a little bit of juice or some extra protein pollen, whatever it may be, it entices with a little bit of a treat for that visit. As you look at plants and ask why, think of the pollination in there too. What are the different things that could potentially be pollinating that plant, but also the things that may be using that plant outside of pollination. So I said about, plants producing things that doesn't care about us. Well, fruits are a case where the plant is producing something to entice something else to come and grab it. There's anybody read Botany of Desire? Yeah, great book. Great book. And there's also a documentary, a nature documentary called The Seedy Side of Plants. The Seedy Side of Plants. And it comes up with this premise of who is in charge. And I love the volunteer opportunity for these native plants out here. Beautiful, fantastic. But as we sweat over these plants, who's in charge? Are we doing exactly what those plants want us to do? Maybe. It's sort of the seedy side of plants, and I love it so much. When we go to a grocery store and we're selecting the right apple, we're doing what the apple wants us to do. Pick up the best genes. We'll nibble on that apple, we'll throw the seeds. We just did exactly what the apple wanted us to do. So fruits, the ripened ovary of these plants, they are producing that thing for some other critter to take and distribute those seeds elsewhere. Name the bird. Anybody know this bird? Have you seen the flocks going through? Name the plant. Oh, I love it when you talk like that, Bob. Yes, Yopan, Ilex vomitoria. You got it. And they are utilizing the fruit of this as they migrate around. And as it goes, they poop out the seeds, they get the fleshy ripened ovary of the fruits there, poop out the seed, and then they distribute that plant too. So this is a fun way to think of the plant's relationship with other critters. But how do they use bugs with their fruit? Name the plant if you know it. Trout lily. On chat, if you're watching on chat right now, say yes or no if you have ever seen a trout lily and where you've seen one before. Where have y'all seen trout lilies before? Dogwood Canyon. Anywhere else? Backyard. Lucky you, buddy. Lucky you, man. Anywhere else? Spring Creek Preserve. Yes. I heard another one. Right, sure. They're kind of all around where you see some limestone and some of these little valleys. Candy Hills, where one of my favorite places has a good selection of these trout lilies. We like to see them in their magnificent form with that nodding flower bending down. But have you seen the pods of them before? In your backyard, look for those pods. They have these long, the peduncles, the stem of that flower, and it sort of leans over and kind of drops down like that. It splits open, it dehisces, and the seeds look a little bit like this on the far photo there. Nothing too extravagant, but when you look at them closely, you can see that there's a little bit of fleshiness. And they use this fleshiness, this little substrate. Oops. Good, very good. Thank you, Emily. For ants. Ants grab the little fruits, these little, and they call them elysiosomes. The names don't matter, but they call them elysiosomes, the fleshy bodies there. The ants will grab those seeds, they'll bring them over to their nest, they'll eat the seedy, or they'll eat the fleshy part, and then they won't eat the seed part there. There's not that sugary, high protein structure, so they'll just dump out the seeds. This is how that plant moves around. Trout lilies use ants to move their seeds around. So we have some of the ways that they work together. So pollination is a big one. They've used entomophagy, or the movement by bugs, the movement of fruit by bugs. We have the arms race that exists too. And the evolutionary arms race, sometimes there's a hypothesis called the Red Queen hypothesis. Has anybody read, what is that, Lewis and Carroll's? Yeah. When was the last time you read that?
Decades ago.
Decades ago, sure. Same here. I'm starting to reread some of the classics, and they're pretty good. Like, I shouldn't have read those as a high schooler when I didn't know anything about life. Now I can see some of the illusions and the allegories and all that sort of stuff that they're playing with. Well, the one that he's talking about here is the Red Queen hypothesis. And basically, Alice is running in place to stay there. You run as fast as you can to stay in that one spot. So you have to run double as fast to get going anywhere. This is called the Red Queen hypothesis. Why is the cheetah fast? Anybody know why the cheetah is fast? Because the gazelle is, because the prey is. Why is the gazelle fast? Because the cheetah is. This is called the arms race. One gets a little bit faster, so the other one gets a little faster. So the other one gets faster, so the other one gets faster. And it can have this wonderful cycle that just continues and continues and continues. So when we look at plants and bugs, they're constantly being predated upon. And if you remember, and I know several folks are master naturalists, if you remember from the ecology lesson, or if you remember from second grade biology, the food webs and food chains and the things that eat other things. So the plants are at the foundation, they are the primary producers, and all the consumers are getting energy from those primary producers. So plants, they just get eaten by everything. They get eaten by everything. How the heck do they defend themselves? Name it if you know it. Anybody know this one? Vetch, yes, hairy vetch. This one is Vicia sativa common vetch. Have you seen this one before? A show of hands. How many of you have seen this one before? Good. And I saw with a little, oh, yes. It is one of those common plants. It is common right now. Not a native, although we do have some native Vicia. When you're cursing at this plant, I want you to look closer. Look closer in the midst of cursing, and you might see something that's kind of interesting. So there's a structure called the stipule of our vetches. And stipules, if you don't know, they're kind of like this extension of the leaf by the stem. Mesquites have spiny stipules there. That's the spines of the mesquite. But with our Vicia, you can see these big, big stipules on the corner there. Oh, thank you. Good. So you can see those big, 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 big stipules. And you might even see a little bit of purple in there. What these are, this is a secreting nectar. It secretes nectar. These extrafloral nectaries secrete a little bit of saccharose, the same sort of substance that nectar is. Why are they doing this? It's not for pollination. It's not to entice something to come to the flower. Instead, it is to entice ants to come and visit those extrafloral nectaries. Why would a plant want ants? Nancy, atta girl, to keep off other bugs. If you're a caterpillar trying to enjoy a lovely lunch and you have ants crawling all around, you're going to hightail it. You're going to look for somewhere else to eat. So the plant encourages ants to walk all around it, visiting these extrafloral nectaries to get a little bit of sweet juice. And it's going to walk, the ants walk all around those vetch. Here is your challenge. As you're yanking up some vetch, or as you're out walking around, vetch is common right now, look closer. Look closer for those extrafloral nectaries on the stipules of vetch. So you go, well, this is kind of cool. Plants and ants, they have the same letters almost. These guys get along great, right? Well, not always. Sometimes other insects will get on a plant. The plant is probably annoyed to heck that there are all these little aphids, and aphids get eaten by a whole bunch of other bugs. In the same sort of manner, aphids are secreting a little bit of honeydew. They're secreting a little bit of structure or a little bit of sugar to get ants to come and walk around, and they're protecting the things that are eating the plant. So the relationship is, it's complicated. It's complicated with ants. To thank Nancy, or to thank Janet and Katie for allowing me to do this presentation, because I learned some things I did not know before. One of the weird things, and we have taken advantage of this in our gardening and with our agriculture too, but there's an induced defense that some plants have. Okay, you're a plant and you're getting nibbled on. If you're getting nibbled on, what if you could sound the horns for a defender? In the same sort of manner, a plant gets nibbled on and it secretes a pheromone, a toxin, or not a toxin, but a smell, a scent. And that scent is picked up by wasps. These wasps are parasitoids of the caterpillars eating them. Mind blowing. Mind blowing. Again, I'll say that again. So the plant gets nibbled on. It secretes a little bit of something up in the air. Wasp, well, they don't hear it. They smell it. They sense it. They come and they attack the caterpillar. You may have seen this before. On your tomatoes, the tomato hornworm, Solanaceae, so plants in Solanaceae, the nightshade family, they produce these OIPVs, oviposition induced plant volatiles. So this caterpillar is eating on the tomatoes, eating on the nightshade. The plant is secreting a smell, calling for the wasps to come and visit it. Mind blowing. To me, this is mind blowing stuff. And if you've ever tried to raise sphinx moths before, you'll notice that most of them are parasitized. A lot of them are parasitized because of that compound that exists in the plants. To me, that is just crazy. So let's say you don't have loud horns, or you don't have that trumpet to call in the defenses. What other plants do when they are being nibbled upon, they will genetically create new proteins that actually attack the potential predator. So they get nibbled on and they do, I'm just going to call it magic. It's biochemistry, but they do magic to create these new toxins that go to attack that attacking insect. Jasmonic acid is the name of this. Crazy, 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 crazy. We look at plants as, and maybe some of us do, but some of us probably don't, mindless critters. You know, they stay where we put them, and they don't really think on their own. But holy moly, are they alive and active, and they've got some pretty cool mechanisms to protect themselves. Physical defense too. Name the plant if you know it, the general plant. Yeah, Opuntia. Confession time. Has anyone ever grabbed an Opuntia before? Yes, describe it. How was it? Pleasant?
Well, no, as a child, I sat on one.
Okay, good. And I'll repeat that real quick. So, and what's your name?
Peter.
Peter. So Peter just said as a child, he sat on one. Memorable?
I remember it.
You do remember it, yes. So was it, go ahead.
And as an adult, I have the blue-gray spineless normal.
Yeah.
If you grab that one, it doesn't have the spines, large spines, but it has the tiny little globins that get in your skin.
Beautiful.
And really, they have you doing this.
It's memorable. It's memorable. So Peter just said, he had the spineless ones, but it's not those big spines that are the pain. It's all of those little glockids. And when you take them under a microscope, you can see why they are so annoying. The other picture there shows it. They're barbed. So it's not just a spiny spike. It's like a fish hook going inside of you. And it makes it hard. And Peter is wincing in pain just thinking about it. Yeah, this is a defense that the plant produces. Now, is this really for insects? Well, maybe, maybe not. When we look at things a little smaller, we can see some other defenses that plants have. Name it if you know it. Anybody know the name? Good. Actually, has anybody seen Lupinus haverdi, the Big Bend bluebonnet before? Have you seen that one before? Alan, how big? Whoppers. And if you can't see on Zoom, it's a couple feet tall. Those guys are really, really big. And these Lupinus, these bluebonnets, gorgeous, gorgeous things. But when you look at the leaves, you can notice some of the fuzz. And that fuzz may be to insulate the water, for water loss, but it also might be a defense against herbivory. Grasshoppers probably don't like hairs getting between their mandibles. So instead, they're going to go something for a little smoother and more, succulent than our bluebonnet fuzz. So the hairs on some of our plants, look closer. That might be a defensive mechanism for our insects. Name it if you know it. Lois, you don't know it? You don't know it? Ooh, bull nettle is this one. Bob Ritchie, tell me about bull nettle. Is it memorable?
Yeah, it's not edible either.
No, it's not memorable nor edible. Okay. Have you ever touched bull nettle before? Yes. Tell us about the experience.
For a long time.
It's incredible. So bull nettle is an incredible plant, a lovely native, and we just joked earlier about having ragweed at the native plant sale. There are some. Sure, good. It's great for birds. It's a wonderful plant. Sandburrs, that's a native grass. It's a native plant. Our bull nettles are native. That's a native plant. I don't know if you bring this to the plant sale, who would, or what would you charge? I don't know what you would charge for this one. But as Bob said, it stings for a long time. Much like with our glaucids, if you take a closer up look at the spines, the little prickles of our bull nettle, they're actually hollow silica needles. They're needles that are hollow. And when you brush up against it, it injects a toxin. It's not something that just stings like a glaucid. It injects the toxin into you. This is a great defense. It is a great defense from us, to harvesting it. Although, Bob, tell us about the edible nature of this. Do you know this one? This one actually, yeah, this one has fruits. It has fruits that have these seeds that apparently taste a lot like a cashew. I've never been brave enough to harvest those, but the fruits of this one, the seeds actually are very starchy, like a cashew. Try it next time. Wow. Good, and we're going to dare each other on who. Will you go pick that for me? They are a memorable plant. Sure.
Stinging nettle.
Yeah, so this is in the same, well, actually, it's in the group of nettles. So the sting nettle, Urticaceae, so Urtica. This one is Nodoscelus. So different genus, but they are very similar. And the similar defensive mechanism too. Yeah, good question. Peter. Yeah.
I know that this and other nettles are the food plant for the red admiral larvae.
Yes.
Explain how the caterpillars protect themselves.
I love it. And that's a great segue. So some of the chemical defenses that plants produce, other things will utilize them. With this one, as Peter was mentioning, so this is a host plant for other butterflies. The red admiral uses this, and I think it also uses some other things at Urticaceae too. Other nettles it will use as a host plant. So how the heck does it get around those spines or not get poisoned by the toxins? And it's another part of that arms race, that the plant produces these toxins to protect it, but other things have gotten around that defense. In the case of our monarchs and milkweed, you've heard about this. Everybody knows the story of monarchs and milkweed. And I used to say, and I actually said it incorrectly, that the latex would get in the mandibles of other things that try to eat them and kind of glue them shut. That's what I always thought it was, the latex. And if you've got it on your fingers, it's very sticky. It's sticky stuff. And you could imagine that would glue together. Instead, that latex is actually a cardiac arrest drug. It's a drug that jacks with your cardiovascular system. So the caterpillar or the grasshopper that isn't a monarch or isn't one of the things that eats the milkweed, it has a heart attack. It has a heart attack after it eats this plant. Amazing. And this paper actually found the genes that create this. They raised fruit flies that could process milkweed, the toxin on milkweed. Kind of neat. We like to jack with nature in all sorts of ways. But these poor fruit flies are now able to eat milkweed and probably nothing less. Anyway, so they produce these cardiac arrest-like drugs that jacks with the cardiovascular system. So is it just monarchs that eat milkweed? What do you think? Good. Excellent. I saw and I could hear the nods no on Zoom. There are other bugs that eat milkweeds in lots of different groups. And very weird, these guys evolved this independently or separately. They evolved the ways to go around those cardiac arrest drugs. We've got a hemipterin in our milkweed bug. Oh, thank you. Right here, oleander aphids. Have you seen those on your milkweed before? On your oleander? No doubt you've seen them. No fun. A milkweed tussock moth right here. We have a couple beetles over here too that have utilized this plant as a food source. So it's kind of neat that other insects have taken this toxic compound and are able to process it. And you may notice a similar characteristic here. Anybody notice it? Orange. You see the colors of it. One thing I didn't know about this relationship too. I thought, okay, monarchs have this, monarchs are orange too. So they're like perfect, right? Nothing eats monarchs, right? So I learned this. Down in Mexico, where they overwinter, there's a couple birds, the black-headed grosbeak and the black-backed oriole, that go to these areas and just gorge themselves with monarchs. They have developed the same sort of defense that they can process that cardiac arrest drug. Do you see something similar with these? Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing that even the thing that eats the thing that ate the thing that could kill other things, it now has that compound in it. Tremendous. I did not know this about these specialist birds that feed on monarchs down in Mexico where they go to overwinter. I tried to look up, okay, can hawks and can owls and can snakes eat these? I couldn't find anything. If you find something, please call me at 2 a.m. and tell me. Please, yes, questions. That's all right.
I'd heard that when birds eat a monarch, it makes them throw up. Is that been incorrect?
Interesting concept. Have anyone else heard this before? You've heard it before, so they don't process those same compounds. I don't know. I don't know how much truth is that. Please, anyone that knows, chime in.
I mean, I don't remember now where I've read and heard that.
Yeah. But it makes sense that they either they fight the critter that's orange and go, oh, this was a bad mistake and regurgitate it out, or don't process that chemical. So I'm not sure exactly what is involved there. But it's a good question. Yes, please.
So chemical makes them orange?
So that's what's weird. That's what's weird. I don't know if it's the chemical that makes them orange or if this is just warning coloration for other critters.
Might there be another color spectrum that we can?
There might be. And I'm going to repeat that for those on Zoom. So the question was, well, is it that compound? Is it this cardenolide? Is it this cardenolide that makes things orange? Or is natural selection recognizing, and I know you shouldn't personify it, but is it recognizing these bright, vibrant colors as being warning coloration? The coral snake doesn't eat any of these milkweeds, doesn't process any of this, but it still has those bright coloration of the orange and the black and the red. So it's a valid question. Is what is creating the orange? Is it that actual compound, or is this just natural selection's way of warning potential predators? And just as mind-blowing, there are things, and we call this Mullerian mimicry, things that look like monarchs. The viceroy, you've heard about the viceroy, that thing is delicious. They're delicious. And birds will eat those things without any consequences. So they're tricking everything else to thinking they have this compound in them by being those colorations. The arms race is just amazing. And one thing that I also liked about learning about it is that there aren't victors. Natural selection doesn't have victors. It just continues. It just continues. So the arms race continues and continues and continues. I bet milkweeds are trying as hard as they can to create more potent chemicals, other defenses to keep these dang monarchs off of them. And it's just this whole process. It's not a victory lap. It is a marathon that who knows where that finish line ends. Okay, other bugs will wear the protection of plants, or they'll wear plants that protect themselves. A lovely moth, this guy right here, the wavy lined emerald moth, quite abundant here in north central Texas. If you get a chance to go on any of the mothing events, the bio blitzes that we have, if we throw up some black lights, almost guaranteed some of these will show up. The butterfly or the moth itself, quite beautiful, really, really pretty, but the caterpillar will blow your mind. Do you see it? Do you see it? Yeah. And Katie's mouth is so agape that she had to close it. It is incredible. This little caterpillar, if you don't see it, I'll point it out. And Emily, if you can play with that pointer, there it is. And on this side, there it is. What these geometrids, and they're inchworms, so geometrid, geo-earth, metrid, measuring, they measure the earth an inch at a time. So these little inchworms of this moth, they will take off the petals of a plant and glue them to their backs. Yes, it's almost unbelievable, but that's what they do. They nibble off little bits of it, glue it onto their back, and they nibble the rest of the plant. And it looks like a flower. Let me show you on Liatris. Yeah, so they use this natural defense. They wear the defense of the plant that they are eating. What's even more mind-blowing, as the petals, the ray flowers, the disc flowers, whatever it might be, as they start to lose their color, the caterpillar replaces them with fresh ones so it can continue eating in peace. Mind-blowing. I can feel the shatterings of brains in here, and online too. I can feel it on Zoom. Yes. That's right. So they're inchworms. Yeah, that's a good point. So they're inchworms. So what they do is they have their prolegs back here. They have their forelegs, or the true legs, right up here. So the prolegs will stay put, and they'll reach back like this and grab them and put them on their backs. So they kind of do some wiggling to get them on the backs, but it's amazing. Is that not mind-blowing? Look closer. How many of you have Liatris in your landscape? Anybody? Good. Or if you've seen it out in nature before, look closer. Look closer at some of those blooms, and your mind might get blown if you see one of these. Yeah.
All those pictures is the same caterpillar on different flowers.
The same species. So it is I don't want to call it a specialist, but it's a specialist on Asteraceae, and that's the monster group, the sunflower family. But that's what they use. And it's called the wavy-lined emerald moth. And we have several in this genus of Synchlora. I believe many of them will do the same sort of defensive mechanism here. Incredible. Incredible. I agree. Isn't that cool? Isn't that fun? So natural selection has also turned the tables on this too. You've heard about insectivorous plants. We have native insectivorous plants. We have pitcher plants. We also have this one called the sundew. A show of hands, has anybody seen a sundew before? On TV? We're going to change that because I'm going to show you the exact location to see sundews, and it's not too far away. So get your pens ready. Okay. Charles Darwin was studying insectivorous plants, and you can feel it in his letters as he's writing to his friends, talking about these plants, that his mind was shattering, just as ours just did. He wrote to one of his friends, I think he wrote to Huxley in this letter. He said, "At the present moment, I care more about Drosera, the sundews, than the origin of all the species in the world." He was so into this that he cared more about this plant's origin than everything else. And it is pretty mind-blowing. So these sundews, if you haven't seen one, or if you've only seen them in television, you kind of know the premise here. A little bug will land on one of the leaves that has these trichomes that produce a lot of this substance, this enzyme. It wraps up that little bug and starts digesting it. These guys live in areas where there's not a lot of nitrogen into the ground, so they have to get some of those and the proteins and other minerals from the things that fly around them. Anybody here want to see a sundew? Yeah, sure. Okay. Do you know where Canton is? Have you ever been in Canton? Yeah, I know. It's a bit of a trek. It's a bit of a trek. Takes about an hour, hour 15 to get there from Dallas. But Cherry Creek Park, it is a public park, and Cherry Creek Park has a lot of sundews. In one section of the park right here, and I hope you can see it, there's my little observations of it, but a whole bunch of other folks have observed them here. They're so thick you can't walk without stepping on sundews. So if you get the chance, if it's on a first Monday and you want to go to, to the Monday stores there in Canton, stop by Cherry Creek Park and you can see some of these sundews for yourself right now. So they're spring. Those guys are most active in spring. Let's see, I think all of mine, March, April, that's when I usually go check them out. But springtime, I don't know exactly how long they last into the year, but it's well worth the trip in itself. Yes, they are annuals. A great question. So they are annuals. They produce a flower on top of this thing on a big peduncle that produces seeds. And I don't know how the seeds move around. I don't know. They'll use the carcasses of the flies as they move them around. I'm not sure, but it's a pretty cool plant. There's other places like Gus Engling Wildlife Management Area. If you've been there before, they've got big old bogs with pitcher plants, and Big Thicket is another great place. And that's the other thing too. So you have to get into some more of the acidic soils to start seeing them. If you try to grow a sundew here, our water's too alkaline. It's way too alkaline. It's way too basic. They probably won't do too well. But anyway, if you want to go see it, that's a great spot to look for them. Sure.
Insectivorous plants here.
So, Bob, there is a neat one and one that I love to talk about. The shepherd's purse. Do you know shepherd's purse? Shepherd's purse is an interesting weed. It's not a native weed. It's a European plant. I'm pretty sure it's European. It might be ubiquitous, but now it's ubiquitous. So shepherd's purse, are you familiar with shepherd's purse? Capsella bursa pastoris. It's a big mustard. It grows, maybe a foot tall, has these little capsules, these little siliques that look like little hearts, little shepherd's purse. And they have these seeds. When they drop to the ground, it releases two enzymes. One of the enzymes attracts nematodes. The other enzyme breaks them down. So it grows from the dying bodies of little nematodes. Capsella bursa pastoris, or shepherd's purse. Look it up and I guarantee you've seen it before in everywhere. Yeah. Other insectivorous plants? I don't. You sure? I bet you nickel and quarter. It's right up there.
Yes.
Yeah, delicious. It's that nematode dissolving enzyme. That's probably good. Smells like dead bacteria in my mouth. Anybody else? I heard another question over here. No? Okay. So if you want to go there, cool. Who cares? What is the relevancy of all this sort of stuff? And I got to be also kind of personal with you folks too. When I tell my bosses about what I'm presenting upon, if I say I'm presenting on bugs in plants, they go, okay, you got to relate it to birds and mammals, stuff that people can hunt, because hunters pay for parks and wildlife. So I try to put everything back to this too, not necessarily with birds and mammals that we can go out and hunt, but what is our role in all of this? One of the fun things that we have the opportunity to do, much like y'all have been doing in the back here, is incorporating these native plants into our landscaping, to seeing the relationships of these things too. And I was thinking about this on my drive here. I live in East Fort Worth, so it takes me a while to drive here. And I was listening to the radio. Have y'all listened to the radio ever? You ever watch television before, anybody? Have you noticed advertisements? Have you noticed these things before? There is a competition for our attention. There is competition for our attention. That is one of the last currencies that we have, is our attention. The plants out there are, maybe they're not competing for it, but isn't it a good investment that we go and provide them with some of our attention? So part of the role is simply to go out and look at some of these relationships, engage with those critters that are doing these sort of neat activities and survival strategies and all that sort of stuff. If you have land, big pieces of land, or a backyard, or a front yard, or a favorite park, or a place where you put in plants, you can manage that. We have some really cool tips and tricks and all that sort of stuff in a management plan to manage for pollinators too. but it goes back to the foundation of plants. You guys know this. I'm preaching to the choir in this too, but the foundation of biodiversity is biodiversity. So the more plants that you can provide, the more species that you can provide in your landscape of plants, the more relationships that you can see. And I'm going to sort of take a page out of Benny Simpson's book. You know, Benny Simpson was not a native plant Nazi. And trust me, I get that way sometimes too. And I'm just like, is this regionally native? Is this regionally native here? You know, is that red yucca regionally native? No, it's not. The crossvine, is that regionally native? You go a little more east to see it out in nature. So we can kind of get into that, you know, that pedestal. We can put ourselves on that pedestal. Benny Simpson wasn't anti-non-native plants. He was anti-invasive plants, but the diversity of plants, native and non-native, that you put in your landscape provides more diversity. Now, of course, with the native plants, you'll see more of the relationships. You'll see the local pollinators going to them, the locals that will be eating them, but the diversity of all the different species is crucial. So that's kind of the relation to all of it. And I think, oh yes, if you're into this stuff, one of my favorite books is this one. Good, and I see some people writing this down. For Love of Insects. It's by Thomas Eisner. Thomas Eisner was a chemical ecologist, and he studied the mechanisms of communication among insects and plants. But he also was just a great naturalist. And he talks about the relationships that insects have with each other, with their predators, with their prey. This is such a good book. It's on my top 2 list. This one and Triumph of an Idea about evolution. So For Love of Insects by Thomas Eisner, a great, great book. So you thought it was just going to be fun to listen tonight. No. You have homework. There is homework. It is springtime. So there are things to do, and I'm giving you an assignment. And on Zoom, I know you can hear me, so you better be writing these down. Here's your challenge. If all you do is go outside, I'll give you full partial credit. Okay. So go outside. That is step 1. You need to go outside. That's the first thing. If you do that, that's okay. That's good. But if you want to go a little deeper, if you want to get full credit here, I want you to look for some of these relationships. So here is your challenge. I want you to go outside. Hopefully we can do that. Go outside. I want you to look for each of these relationships. Pollination. And when I say look for it, I don't mean the completion grade look for it. I mean, you see a pollination, I want you to actively watch it. If anybody here have autumn sage in your landscape, good. A lot of people do. Watch it. Watch it as a bee visits that plant. They'll sit on that lower labrum, the lip, and you'll see the top part sort of dust on their back. Watch it. Watch that sort of relationship. So pollination, good. Whoa, kudos if you can see some of these other ones. The movement of seeds by an insect or by something else. I'll give you credit for any sort of critter that moves a seed around. Pull up some vetch. If you see some vetch, look closer for those extrafloral nectaries. Look for ants visiting those extrafloral nectaries. If you look closely, you might find it. Look for a bug that's eating a plant. I bet you can find that too. If you want to show teacher, you can post on iNaturalist, tag me if you'd like to. But if you just go outside and look for these things, you get full credit too. Okay, so there are your challenges. Any questions about your challenge, your homework assignment? Okay, I know you all heard me, so I expect those in by Monday. I'm just kidding. I don't care when they come in. But yeah, hopefully sometime.
When do we get our grade?
Sure. You will. Stickers. Let me go get some stickers real quick. And yes, I'll put a sticker on your observation if you print it out, and I'll sign it for you. Okay, with that one, anybody else have any other questions? And I think that's my last little slide there, Emily. There you go. With that, Anybody have any questions about bugs and plants? Awesome. If you have any questions that were scared to ask me in real life, here's my email address. It's the longest possible email address. There it is. The state gave it to me, but I'm active on iNaturalist, probably more than my work email, and I'm Sam Biology there. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Oh, yes. One question.
Thing about a pocket gopher.
Sure. Gophers. Okay, good. So this is okay, we have another 6 hours. How long do we have this room? So pocket gophers are amazing. I love pocket gophers. They seem like a pest to most critters. And what I was going to study before I studied the genetics of pocket gophers was the lice on pocket gophers. Distinct species of pocket gophers. I know this is useful stuff. Useful stuff. Distinct species of pocket gophers have distinct lice on them. Each population of gophers becomes isolated. So the parasites on those gophers become new species themselves. So that was mind-blowing. The other weird thing about pocket gophers, has anybody seen pocket gophers before? These, you don't really see them out and about. They're different than prairie dogs. So prairie dogs are out, have a lot of characteristics and all that sort of stuff. Gophers are mostly fossorial, so they're living underground. You'll see the burrow, the piles of soil around them. In Canton, actually at that park, if you want to see some pocket gophers, there's some there too.
Is idiot out here? Yep, okay.
Another weird thing about pocket gophers, so they have
I'm heading
their
to bed. I don't know why, I'm
ground, and
tired.
they have a tail that's fairly hairless. And in their tunnels, they'll have different forks in them in different areas. So they'll go backwards with their tail and feel where the Y is. So cool. They have these pocket gopher. They're called pocket gophers because they have fur-lined cheeks. So kind of like the pocket on your slacks, the same thing for their cheeks. They'll stuff little roots and tubers back in there. And whenever I would go and collect them, and I collected, golly, about 250 gophers. I know they're all waiting for me in the afterlife. I know this. But I would go and collect, and it's so crazy because you can stick your whole finger back in one of these cheeks, and it's super soft, like it's fuzzy. The whole cheek is. So really, really cool. I love gophers. Any other questions on gophers? Yeah. Sure. Sure. So yeah, gophers, they can be pretty big. So they'll get, give or take 8 inches, 10 inches or so. My study was on the genetics of them. And as those master naturalists, you've probably heard this before. In Canton, as a matter of fact, one lady's backyard in Canton in Van Zandt County, the species I worked with was all of East Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So I'd drive around, I'd see gophers in somebody's yard. Can I collect your gophers? So I collected gophers from one lady's backyard in Canton. And in her backyard, there was more genetic diversity of gophers than the whole state of Oklahoma. I know. What we think during the last ice age, give or take 15, 16,000 years ago, the glacier came down to Wisconsin, and a lot of Oklahoma was kind of like Canada. It was not hospitable for gophers. So gophers kind of retreated, or the few survivors stayed down here in Canton, in East Texas, Southeast Texas. As the glacier receded, fewer individuals started making their way north, so we'd have a smaller gene bank of those in Oklahoma.
Right.
It's useful stuff. When I'm talking to a city council or park board, they say, please tell us more about gophers. Yes. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. You got to go where deep sands are. So they need deep sands. So Arlington actually has a little population, Geomys bursarius, that's over there. If you go to Village Creek Drying Beds, has anybody heard of Village Creek Drying Beds? It's a great birding spot. Emily's heard of them. That's a spot where you can see some of this species of gopher. But you have to go a little bit more east or further west to see them. Not really here in north central Texas. Good question. Anybody else? Gophers or plants or bugs? Southern California, you better believe it. They have thermomes there, which has more shallow tunnels. So they'll actually pop out their head every now and then. You'll see them. The ones that we have, you rarely see them. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. If you have more Gopher questions, send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have just one other thing, and thank you. Always amazing. I knew people were really excited you were coming. I forgot to mention, we get requests and just all kinds of things through our website, and I get those emails. And so there was one in particular from a physics professor